Hi, I'm Sophia, a 28-year-old new mother, navigating the beautiful yet challenging world of motherhood. The first days at home with my newborn son were a whirlwind of bliss and exhaustion. Despite the immense joy he brought into our lives, the physical recovery from childbirth was tougher than I anticipated. The house was in constant disarray, laundry piled up, and dishes rarely made it out of the sink. One afternoon, as I was trying to soothe my crying son, the doorbell rang unexpectedly. It was Linda, my mother-in-law, who popped in unannounced. Her eyes quickly scanned the cluttered living room before settling on me with a blend of concern and disapproval. "I thought I'd come and see how you're managing, dear," Linda said, stepping over a stray baby toy. "Tom mentioned you might need some help." "Thanks, Linda. Things are a bit hectic, but we're managing," I replied, trying to mask the stress in my voice. Linda walked into the kitchen, where the clatter of unwashed dishes echoed around us. "It looks like you could use more than a little help," she remarked, her tone sharp. "This place is a mess. Is this how you plan to raise my grandson?" Her words stung, and I felt the weight of her judgment crushing my already fragile spirit. "I'm doing the best I can," I said defensively, holding my son a little tighter. Linda sighed heavily. "Sophia, being a mother is about prioritizing, and right now, it seems like you're not prioritizing anything at all." I was about to respond when Tom walked in. Seeing the tension, he quickly tried to diffuse the situation. "Mom, Sophia is doing an amazing job. It's been tough with the baby not sleeping well," Tom said, trying to defend me. Instead of backing down, Linda turned to Tom. "You need to help her understand what's at stake. It's not just about keeping the house clean. It's about responsibility. She's not living up to the family standards." Tom looked at me, then back at his mother, torn. "Mom, please let's not do this now. Sophia's recovering, but that's exactly when you need to instill discipline," Linda interrupted, her voice rising. "If she learns it now, she'll manage better in the future. You can't be soft on her, Tom." "Maybe you're right, Mom. Maybe Sophia needs to learn the hard way," Tom said, the words feeling foreign as they left his mouth. "Exactly," Linda nodded, pushing Tom gently but firmly toward me. "Show her that this behavior won't be tolerated." I barely had time to react before Tom's hand struck my cheek. The sound echoed through the room, a stark and horrifying marker of the line that had been crossed. I held our son close, his cries mingling with the rapid beating of my heart. "Tom, what are you doing?" I managed to say through tears, the pain from the slap less than that of the betrayal. "This is for your own good, Sophia. You need to learn," Tom said, his voice hollow, his eyes not meeting mine. The room fell silent except for the soft whimpers of my son. Tom glanced at me apologetically, his face a mix of frustration and embarrassment. Linda stood firm, her expression unreadable but her stance uncompromising. What was supposed to be a supportive visit had turned into a full-blown critique of my parenting and my worth. As Linda prepared to leave, she whispered something to Tom at the door. I couldn't hear it all, but her insinuating tone and Tom's troubled look told me it wasn't words of support. That night, as I rocked my son to sleep, I couldn't shake off the feeling of dread that had settled over me. What was supposed to be a supportive family structure felt more like a tribunal, and I was on trial. As I tended to my son and my stinging cheek, the clarity of my next steps formed amidst the chaos. I needed a plan, a way out, not just for my safety but for the well-being of my little boy. The house that once felt like a home now felt like a trap set by the very people who were supposed to love and protect us. The night after Tom slapped me under the manipulative guidance of his mother, Linda, I couldn't bear to sleep next to him. With my baby in my arms, I retreated to the nursery, a room that had been a sanctuary of sorts these past few weeks. As I rocked my son back to sleep, the events of the day replayed in my mind, each replay sharpening the pain and betrayal. The next morning, while Tom was at work and Linda presumably in her own domain, I made the call. Jessica answered on the second ring. "Jess, it's me. I need that help you offered," I said, my voice a mix of fear and determination. "Say no more, Sophia. I'll come by today with my truck. We can store your things at my place until you figure out where you want to go," Jessica responded, her voice firm and reassuring. The plan was simple but risky. I would pack as much as I could during the day, focusing on essentials for my son and me. Jessica would help me move everything to her place in the evening. We decided it was best to leave before Tom came home from work. I knew if I faced him, he might sway me with apologies, or worse, the influence of Linda might prevail again. Throughout the day, as I packed every outfit, every baby toy felt heavy with memories and what-ifs. But the echo of Tom's slap and the look in Linda's eyes were all the reminders I needed that staying was not an option. By late afternoon, most of our things were boxed up and hidden in the garage. Jessica arrived just as the sun began to set, her presence a beacon of hope in what had been one of the darkest days of my life. "Ready?" she asked as she walked in, taking in the scene of our life reduced to boxes and bags. "As I'll ever be," I replied, holding my son a little tighter. We worked quickly, loading the truck with the stealth and speed of a well-oiled machine. The nursery, my sanctuary, was the last room I cleared. I took a moment there, a silent goodbye to the life I had hoped to build with Tom. Driving away from the house, I watched it disappear in the rearview mirror, a chapter closing with a heavy but hopeful heart. My baby slept quietly in his seat, unaware of the change but finally safe. This was the first night of our new life, one where fear and manipulation would no longer hold sway. Safe at Jessica's place, my resolve only grew stronger. The peace and support I found there contrasted sharply with the oppressive atmosphere of my own home. It was here, in this sanctuary, that I began to meticulously plan how to expose Tom and Linda for their true colors. The idea wasn't just to escape, but to ensure they couldn't twist the narrative to their advantage or ever do this to someone else. I started by reaching out to family and friends under the guise of catching up. During these conversations, I subtly recorded any mentions of Linda's behavior or Tom's unusual submission to her. Some were wary, but many were unaware of the depths of manipulation and control Linda wielded. Over the weeks, these bits of evidence began to form a clearer picture. I compiled text messages, voicemails, and recorded calls. I even managed to capture a particularly damning video of Linda coaching Tom on how to handle me, using language that made it clear this was more about control than concern. With everything in place, I chose the venue for the confrontation, a family gathering hosted by Tom's sister for her anniversary. It was a neutral place with enough family members present, some of whom had quietly expressed discomfort with Linda's dominance in the family dynamics. On the day of the gathering, my nerves were taut as a wire. I arrived with Jessica, who had agreed to support me through this ordeal. The murmurs of greeting were tepid. The tension around Tom and Linda's recent domestic issues had reached even the most distant relatives. After the initial pleasantries, I stood up, my hands trembling but my voice steady. "I have something important to share with all of you today," I began, every eye in the room locking on me. "It's about Tom and his mother, Linda, and how their actions have not only impacted me and my son, but the entire family." Tom, looking shocked and a bit scared, tried to interrupt. "Sophia, let's not do this here." But I pressed on, pulling out my phone. "This is not just a domestic issue," I said as I connected my phone to the Bluetooth speaker. The room fell silent as the recordings played. Linda's harsh directives, Tom's hesitant agreements, their planning to correct my behavior. The reactions varied from shock to disgust. Tom's aunt, who had always been fond of me, looked particularly betrayed. "Is this true, Linda? Were you forcing Tom to do these things?" she demanded. Linda's face was a mask of fury and panic as she tried to deflect. "These are just out of context." But Tom's cousin, a quiet observer until now, stood up. "No, they aren't. We've seen hints of this for years. We just never wanted to believe it." The confrontation turned the tide. Relatives began sharing their own observations and experiences, slowly painting the portrait of a woman who had manipulated her family under the guise of matriarchal concern. Tom sat there, pale and silent, finally seeing the web his mother had woven around him. As the family meeting turned into a heated debate about Linda's influence, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The truth was out, not just for me to see, but for everyone. After the storm of the family confrontation, the aftermath was a quiet, somber realization for everyone involved. Tom's family, long under Linda's sway, now saw her manipulations for what they truly were. The collective shock was palpable, the discomfort undeniable, as they all came to terms with how deeply Linda's influence had burrowed into their lives. For me, the decision to leave Tom was as painful as it was necessary. As the family gathering dispersed, the finality of my choice settled in. I gathered my son, who remained blissfully unaware of the turmoil around him, and with one last look at the family home, I stepped into the unknown. Tom watched us leave, a mixture of sorrow and resignation in his eyes. His voice, once so familiar, now seemed like a distant echo as he whispered a feeble goodbye. Linda, on the other hand, faced a harsher reality. The family she had controlled so tightly now turned their backs on her, each member grappling with their own betrayal and misplaced trusts. The blame for breaking the family apart was placed firmly at her feet. Her attempts to regain control fell on deaf ears. The evidence and collective testimonies at the gathering had been too damning. In the weeks that followed, Tom tried to reach out, his messages a mix of apologies, pleas for understanding, and promises of change. But the memory of his hand raised against me, the echo of his mother's voice in his actions, were barriers too great to overcome. The trust was shattered, and with it the foundation of our marriage. I found refuge in a small apartment far from the neighborhood I once called home, a place where no one knew my story. Jessica remained my steadfast supporter, helping me navigate this new phase of life. My days were filled with the simple routines of caring for my son and rebuilding a world safe from the shadows of the past. The healing process was slow and often painful. There were days when the weight of everything that had happened felt overwhelming, but the freedom to make choices without fear of manipulation or abuse was a powerful motivator. I attended therapy, joined support groups for single mothers, and gradually, the fragments of my old self began to knit back together into someone stronger, more resilient. My son's laughter became my anchor, his milestones a series of light points guiding me forward. As he grew, so did my confidence in our future, one I was now cracking on my terms. Months turned into a year, and one evening, as I put my son to bed in our cozy living room filled with drawings and toys, I reflected on the journey. The pain of the past was still a shadow, but it was a shadow dwarfed by the light of new beginnings. The support of friends and the unconditional love of my son had woven a safety net strong enough to catch me on the days I faltered. Sitting down with a cup of tea, I finally felt ready to share my story. I started a blog, a space to speak about my experiences, to connect with others who might be facing their own battles against manipulation and abuse. Each post was a step further away from the victim I had been and a step closer to the advocate I was becoming. As our story of resilience and courage concludes, I want to pose a thought-provoking question to all of you. Do you believe it's possible to fully break free from manipulative family dynamics, or do the shadows of such relationships linger in our lives forever? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments.